So from perspective of going through the process, right, the class builds off your book in many respects, but follows the process incrementally, right? Deciding what you want to build, where you want to build it, figuring out what you're going to build from a design perspective, getting that approved, financing, construction, leasing, right?
Yes.
All of those elements of the process. Which one do you think is the most challenging, and why do you think it's the most challenging?
Let me answer it this way. So in the book, I talk about the relationship between income and cost. And that seems like a pretty straightforward thing. You know, somebody tells you what the income their building is generating. You ask them what it costs. You understand the relationship, the return. But it's not nearly as straightforward as it seems. So, you know, if I ask somebody, as cost goes up, income goes, it's not clear. I give you an extremely, it's not a simple example, but it's easy to understand. So maybe it's a bit dated. You know, 10 years ago, everybody was saying, should apartments go from 8-foot to 9-foot ceilings? So let's think about that in an income cost perspective. So how much more rent will you get if you increase the ceilings from 8 to 9 feet? Well, it's very hard to say. I mean, you could look at different properties and say, oh, this has 9 feet, this has 8 feet, but there's a lot of noise in that. Maybe it's because it's in a different neighborhood. Maybe it's, who knows why there's more rent there. It's very hard to say how much. You can't really ask people. They can't quantify that. And so that's the income side. Cost side, what's it going to cost to go from 8 to 9 feet? Good luck. I mean, try to figure that out, because it affects the skin on the outside of the building. It affects the lengths of all the plumbing, all the electrical, all the telecom, the dry. I mean, it has all the 2x4s, you know, or 2x6s, whatever your framing system is. You're not going to get every contractor on the job to bid out those two scenarios. So we don't know how much more it's going to cost. Okay, so we come back to the relationship of income and cost. We don't know how much more rent we're going to get. We don't know what it's going to cost to make the change. So how do we then even compare these two? That's a really simple example, but it's that indecision, you know, because income, it's not one thing. It's revenue and expenses. Well, revenue and what revenue you get is I've identified like 10 different factors that go into that. Expenses, you know, operating expenses, there's like 10 factors that go into that. And costs as well. There's like 10 different economies and diseconomies. So to bring it back to your question, what's the most difficult part? When you're considering a decision like this and you talk to the people from the different disciplines, construction, design, engineering, they're very likely to give you a clear answer to like one of those 30 factors. They're like, let me help you understand this. And they are helping me understand one of 30 factors. But I can't that's not the only factor. And I think maybe that's not widely understood. And even when I know all the factors, so let's say I have those, you know, all these different factors in place and something is wrong, like the development doesn't pencil, it's the economics aren't good enough. So I have one data point. That design is this data point and I need to be right here. Well, I can only ask all these people to draw and then bid so many different iterations. It's not like I can ask them to give me 20 iterations, because there's some kind of a curve, right? There's for this building, there's an optimal size, there's an optimal configuration where you're going to get the very best return, but you only get like 2 data points. So when you get this bid and you get this bid, you're like, well, what happened between those points? I don't know. And it's really frustrating because you want to make the best decision and it's just about impossible. To wrap it up, I have kind of discerned what I call the 3 peaks. So there's a certain business where you're building low-rise stuff, probably out of wood, and there's a certain kind of optimal size and way to design a building like that. And then when you say no, it's going to be concrete and steel, there's a certain, now we're getting higher, but even that starts becoming inefficient at a certain point. You know, like at 420 feet, everything changes for the fire code. But then if you get views, you know, if you're way up high, you can see the coast and so on, and then it troughs again. So this is something that I'm still researching, but I have to say it's really frustrating, more so because you have a team of professionals in the room. They want to know what to do. And if you tell them they can do any one thing, but they can't help you decide what to do. And the answers that they're giving you about their piece of it, unfortunately, are not as conclusive as they seem, because it's just one piece of it. That's the hardest part for me.
Well, I think that's one of the things we talk about in class, right? The book does a great job of talking about all the parties involved. And one of the things that we've emphasized in our classroom learning is how every decision that gets made becomes the basis for the next decision.
Yes.
And so as you start to maybe veer or make a bad decision, those have a way of compounding in a way that is almost invariably extremely expensive.
Yes.